The Krays, identical twins who rose from poverty to power and became the most notorious criminals in British history.
They were criminal celebrities, you know, they were top of the tree.
You could tell they were going to go to the top.
Hi, I'm Nick from Underworld Uncut. Over the years, we've spoken to a lot of Kray associates and contemporaries. This week, we're looking back at some of our favourite interviews, all about the Kray Twins.
How can a normal man go in a pub in daylight and shoot a man in the head?
But we did go, and whilst we were there, Ronnie Bender came up and he said they've killed Jack. No, I said, never in a million years, not in front of all them people. He said he's downstairs, he's dead.
Well, I met him when I was about 18. I was on the run from the army. I'm about a year older than them. I used to go to a dance hall called the Royal over Tottenham. It used to be the in place at the time, and that's where I first met Ronnie and Reggie.
Basically, I got involved with them because I didn't really want to be involved with them because I was doing okay. I mean, I decided that London, there was no money really in London. The bigger money was in the big cities like Birmingham, Manchester, and I went to buy some American dollars from somebody at the Blind Beggar, and my car was having a service, and I came out, I was waiting for a bus, and the guy called Ronnie Bender, who went down with us, came by, and he said, "Hello, Chris, want a lift?" So I said, "Yeah, you give me a lift to my house." So Ronnie Bender took me home and dropped me off, and that was as far as I was going to be concerned. But then about an hour later, Ronnie Bender came to my house and said, "Chris," he said, "the twins want to meet." I said, "Look, Ron, I'm not in, you haven't found me, have a few quid and I'll see you later." He said, "Tony's down there." Yeah, couldn't walk away. So I went down there and got introduced to Reggie and Ronnie. "What are you doing, what are you up to?" And I said, "Well, I'm in the Midlands and I'm doing this, that and the other." Didn't tell them everything, but told them some of it. And they said, "Well, we just opened a club in Leicester. Can you get some of your friends over to our gambling place?" And I said, "What I can do." Shook my hand and had a nice evening with them. And I introduced them gamblers to their clubs, and that was it. So I kind of was in, really. So whenever I came down to London, they'd want me to go around and see them and talk about this, that and the other, and they had something to put me into, and likewise. So that's really how I got in with them.
It was funny because when I got dumped sawn off, that's when I met Reggie and Ronnie, because they was up the Old Bailey. It was the old Bailey in them days, and you go up the stairs and you think, as you walk up the stairs, you think Crippin's been up here and all the rest of them, you know. And they was walking along the landing because they was on trial when I was a young kid. I knew who they was, but I didn't know them at that time. And it was Ronnie. He went and he looked at me because we walked along with the prison officers and they was going down to the court and we was coming up. And he went, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm here for criminal assault and armed robbery." He went, "You cheeky little so-and-so." He said, "Fair play to you." He said, "I'll probably see a lot of you in here." I said, "You probably will." And that was when we really got to know each other, because going up and down the Old Bailey. And then years later, obviously, we done jail together, done a lot of jail together.
And I first met him when I'd been out of the army about 6 weeks, and I was walking down Badet Road off of Mile End, and I see this big fella having a fight with these two young fellas. So I went over and helped them. They got away. He was a copper, he arrested me. He said, "Do you know who they was?" I said, "No, who are they?" He said, "They're the Kray Twins." He said, "I was arresting them, they're on the run from the army." Oh, I said, "I didn't know that, mate." He said, "Now you're arresting." He said, I finished up in half square. My mum come up there crying. And that's how I met him. And then the next time I met him was the snooker hall. And I went in the snooker hall in Eric Street, and they came in, and I was playing snooker, and then while I was waiting to take a shot, this fella tapped me on the shoulder and it turned round. He said, "You don't remember me, do you?" I said, "No, I do, yeah." He said, "I'm Reggie Kray." He said, "You helped us when the old Bill was holding us." So the other one went, "Yeah, and I'm Ronnie." And I looked, I couldn't tell them apart, could you? You couldn't tell them apart.
I'd just come out of prison, and my sister told me what terrific guys they were, where they'd helped her husband Jimmy to get a job or something. And she introduced me to them. They used to fetch my sister to visit me in prisons all over the country. And she couldn't speak highly enough of them, what absolute gentlemen they were, and I liked them, yeah. You've got to remember I was 10 years or more older than them, and I'd drink with their father. This is during the war. And sometimes I'd go home with their father, Reggie and Ronnie's dad, and have a meal. And they were back from evacuation. And they used to call me Uncle Frank. Years later, we had a good laugh about it. Uncle Frank? We had a great laugh about it, yeah.
I met them through Charlie, their brother Charlie, who was older than them, and the oldest brother. And he was working with a buyer who used to buy crooked goods, you know, let's put it that way, which covered a whole range of different things. And he used to come over to South London to buy these and to sell to the East End. You know, the poor families used to get something a bit cheap. And that's where I first met Charlie. I got to know him. Then the twins were only young then, but there's something about them that was destined to be notorious, you know.
They were all right, yeah. Very respectful, yes. Their mum and dad brought them up well that way, yeah. They're two good boxers and growing up and that, looking after themselves. So they were very popular in the East End, very popular. And quite rightly, because they had a lot of good ways about them. If people were behind with their rent, they would pay it for them. They'd done a lot of good things, yes. Oh yeah, you could tell they were going to go to the top, yeah, definitely. There was something there, without a doubt. They had that in them, yeah, definitely. Ronnie was the lively one. Reggie was a bit more laid back, but they were two terrific guys, yeah.
I remember the first time I went to their home, and they were out in the backyard punching the daylights out of each other, you know. And the old man and Charlie had to go out and stop them. But they were unruly. But he used to say to me, Charlie, to have a word with them, you know, the twins, and see if he can talk some sense into them. But of course they were too young and fiery. They wouldn't listen to what you had to say. You go in one ear and out the other. They still do what they wanted to do. Very unruly, really.
Well, she's a typical lovely mum, as mums should be. She worshipped them, and so she should, because they were two terrific guys. She was their hero, and the lovely lady and all. They worshipped her.
She was a lovely woman. She didn't swear. She came out of Irish gypsies, didn't she? How they portrayed her in the film they made was a load of rubbish. See, when they make these films, they want to make it right, you know what I mean? How people really was, you know, not how they think they should be. Hope you're making this the way I am, not
They've been a nice family, funnily enough.
Well, he was a good man, I liked him, but it was when they were growing up, he was on the run at the time, their dad. He was hardly ever home, and he did get a little bit shifty then as he was getting older, yeah. So he wasn't really a very good influence on them.
Old Charlie, the dad, he was a bit of a nuisance. He's got me in trouble several times, you know. When Olive Cornell, after Ronnie shot him, she went round the house, smashed all the windows out of the house. Yeah. The old man, the mum and the dad, they went down to Steeple Bay, where they had a caravan. They had about 4 vans down there. And me and a fella called Ronnie Hart, Ronnie sent us down there to keep eye on the mum and the dad. He said to me, whatever you do, don't give you no drink, the old man. So I was in the clubhouse there one afternoon, and he walked in. Now, it's hard when you're in company and someone's come and joined the company, you're getting a drink in, you can't leave them out, you know. It's a terrible thing to do, isn't it, really? So I got him a drink. So that afternoon he got well boozed, and he's walking back to the caravan, and they had like a little ditch. So he's hopped over this ditch, and he had them little yacht shoes on, and he happened to jump right on a lump of wood with a nail in it. So he said, I'll be all right. So he went in. The next morning, Violet banged on our caravan door, and she said, I heard the state he's in. She said, his foot's like a balloon. Went in, his foot was really big, you know. So I took him to Colchester Hospital. They gave him a couple of anti-tetanus injections and all that, took him home, and he laid in the caravan. That weekend, Ronnie come down. Oh, did he go off at me, you know. Very cold, Reggie, very cold person.
There was there was two sides of Reggie. There was the Reggie that in business you wouldn't want to mess with. You're talking about one of the most serious bits of work, as with, the Richardsons, they were serious people, but they did it the right way. In our world, they did it the right way. But there's also that compassionate side. Well, he was a man not to be messed with, that's for sure. The twins, they had that family thing, they had that family bond, and when you were young, you sort of grew up in that environment. They were like your film stars are to the other kids, the pop idols, And if you was going to be a villain, that's what you was aspiring to.
Reggie in himself really wasn't a murderer. Reggie would talk to people. Reggie was quite affable.
Reg was in conflict within himself, if you know what I mean. I think he was discovering what he wanted to be, his gender, to be honest with you. He had a beautiful wife, Frances. She was a lovely girl. He never, ever had anything sexually to do with that girl. Reggie, even the dad would tell you that, old Charlie. He'd say, you ain't give her one yet, He'd tell you straight out.
I hated him. I didn't like him much before, because he'd hurt so many good people. Well, they become thieves ponces at the end. Well, they even sent two fellas down to me for $2,000 when they knew I had a good tickle. They never got nothing off me, but they become thieves ponces. But they hurt a lot of people. They were bloody liberty takers, But Ronnie, he was good-hearted. He didn't had no respect for money. Well, he was good-hearted, Ronnie Kray. He'd give money away like water.
He used to give me plenty of money.
Yeah, he was good-hearted. He wasn't tight, I don't think he had any value for money, But he used to give a lot of money. Well, people used to go to him when they come out of the nick, and they used to give them money and buy them clothes, didn't they, Bill? They used to go to the twins.
Well, out of the two twins, I preferred Ronnie, though he was definitely a sick boy. He was sick. He was on medication very young. The medication he used to take would knock a horse over, as he got older. He was very, very generous, very honourable, and if he said something, he gave his word, then he would keep his word. Where Reggie would be inclined to sit on the fence a little bit,
I liked Ronnie, I really liked him. He was really, to me, a nice fella, I've seen the bad side of him. I've seen him stab people and shoot people, but I still liked him. He was a nice fella. He never hurt me. He was good to me,
One day I saw him walking away from the Carpenter's Arms, and as he was walking away, overcoat on, head down, he just looked a man that was lost. He was easy prey to Ronnie, I will say that. But Ronnie, when he didn't take his Stemisol, which was a drug to keep him, his paranoia and everything else down, he was out of control. And it could have happened to anybody. Hence what happened to the blind beggar. He just walked in and shot a guy.
Charlie, of course, was my friend. He was the main reason I helped them the way I did.
He was a gentleman, wasn't he, Bill?
Yeah, Charlie got a good living. He had a theatrical agency, didn't he? He used to supply acts for clubs and things like that.
All he ever wanted to be was a family man, and Ronnie wouldn't let him be. Because every time they got in bother, they get on to Charlie, wouldn't they? And because he's their brother, you're going to help your brother. That's what families do, don't they? When Ronnie burnt me with the pokers, a couple of days later, Charlie Kray came out and gave £100. He said, don't let the boys know that I'll be around here. I'm doing this on my own, That was Charlie. But Charlie Kray was a lovely fella, gentleman. Well, I liked Charlie right till the day he died.
Yeah, they were. Why they shouldn't ought to be, though, because you couldn't meet two nicer guys. So say my sister Eva, they used to fetch her to visit me in prisons all over the country. She couldn't speak highly enough of them, quite rightly, for that. Absolute gentleman. If anybody mugged a woman then, and Reggie and Ronnie found out who done it, they would bash them up, quite rightly. And that would be good. They were untouchable in their world.
Oh, they were, yeah, they were. Over a period of time, their reputation spread. When it first started, people went to them, because if they had a troublesome business, a nightclub or a public house where it's a bit rough, they would welcome the twins into the business and put them on a wage because they would have no more trouble. You know, it was a sort of protection business that was beneficial to both sides. If somebody had been burgled or robbed, or someone on the manor was screwing up people's houses, they would pick them up and have a word with them. And I suppose in a sense it was a safer place when they was around here, because you didn't have the liberty takers, you know, taking liberties. If anyone took any liberties, it'd be them, nobody else, you know.
They didn't need the police when Reggie and Ronnie was out, because Reggie and Ronnie made sure that no one got hurt or anything. Any rows they had was only amongst ourselves, and if we hurt or killed one another.
When Reggie was at it, he was feared by villains. He was respected, and Ronnie, by the community. They were respected because they looked after their own.
No one got mugged them days like now, did they?
People were terrified of him. I wasn't, I admit it, you know, because you never knew what you can do next.
Ronnie, when he got these manic urges on him, he would go out and do something really dangerous. He was a dangerous person, and nobody knew what he was going to do. He just went and did it. He used to go into these manic, depressive sort of moods and mood swings, you know. And you never knew what he was going to be from one day to the next. I saved a lot of people from being injured and being killed, really, because when he was in these moods, I used to talk him out of these things, say, you know, you're just silly, what are you doing this for? It don't represent this. You know, why jeopardise people's liberties? People got to clear up after you, you know, when you've had a manic turn like you're doing, pacing up and down, smoking a cigarette with the braces on, up and down like a caged lion, you know?
Ronnie was the lively one. Reggie was a bit more laid back.
How can a normal man go in a pub in daylight and shoot a man in the head?
Yeah, but that was Ronnie.
Oh, that was Ronnie.
Reggie was the more violent one, you know? Reggie was the more violent than Ronnie. You got it worse up with Reggie than you did up with Ronnie. But I used to drive and do little different things like, you know.
He was one of the most trusted on the firm, Billy.
You had a lot of backbiters on it, though. People who wanted to tell little tales about you and, you know, a lot of jealousies and things like that.
They had the local people around them who was sound, solid people, but they employed people who come down from Glasgow and different parts of the country who had no pedigree. Who you know, in London, you know fathers, you know, uncles and grandfathers, and you've got this history that you can go back on from certain families, and you know they're sound and solid people because they come from that background. But these people was turning up, you didn't know who they were, where they come from, why they was in London, and they'd probably done something wrong somewhere else and they was on their toes down here. And they employed all the wrong people, and then the twins was doing their own villainy. They delegated to certain members of the firm, they'd make out they was going out to do things and they'd come back and make some excuse or some fanny or other, saying that something went wrong or this went wrong. But they did most of their own villainy. And I say, why are you doing, what you got these people for? If you're going doing your own villainy, you're doing the work for them and they're on the payroll, you know? And this is and these were the people who rolled over as soon as the crap hit the fan. They were the first people to make statements and to roll over and give evidence against them.
I was never one of their firm. I didn't want to be at one of their firm. As far as I was concerned, their firm were very poor. You know, they relied on handouts and stuff like that, where I was moving with some bigger fish up in the Midlands. In fact, when Charlie Kray came up to the Midlands with Mickey Riley, Billy Hill's nephew, they were amazed at kind of the surroundings, you know, and the people and the houses, you know, that I had access to, you know.
Strangely enough, it really didn't enter my head in that so much. That I knew them well. I was that 10 years older than them. So it really didn't enter my head. And in them days, I was hardly ever out of prison anyway. I was already then in prison. I say, well, I'll think about it. But then I went with the Richardsons and told them, and they were quite okay about it. I said, yeah, they're nice fellas, Frank. Simple as that.
Well, gangsters, you know.
See, that
They were
even
good
in
dressers,
even
good
in,
personalities, really, you know.
even in America, the same thing. Why do the gangsters out in America attract the film stars and all that? It's a different way of life, isn't it? You know, different side they see, isn't it? You know.
Well, in America, then they control a lot of the film industry, don't they?
Yes, Barbara Windsor, yeah, I know her very well, Babs. And she thought the world of the Kray Twins, and they thought the world of her. And they done their best to help her along in her very early days.
They all knew Reggie, you know, they knew him from their young day. And there's that East End bond, and there's that criminal bond. They weren't criminals, but they were always, you get celebrities, funny enough, linked very much with the Underworld.
Cornell, he was friendly with the twins, but he was more friendly with the Richardsons, because I told you, people really didn't want to be on the Kray firm. There weren't a lot of money involved. The twins had all the money, you could spend it like water, but the firm hardly had any money at all. That's why I never wanted to be on them. And I think maybe George Cornell had the same kind of feelings. I don't want to be on the Kray firm. There's nothing there for me. But I could exploit the Richardsons. There's money there. You know, they were more, how can I put it? They were more about getting hold of money, seeing opportunities and following them through. And that was because they had all the one-armed bandits, of course, in most of the clubs in London, which was like a lot of money involved there. And so that's where Cornell went and became an enforcer for them.
Well, I just don't know what come over Ronnie. That's why I say with those, on those drugs, when he got these manic urges on him, he would go out and do something really dangerous. He was a dangerous person. And nobody knew what he was going to do. He just went and did it. I mean, he just walked in there in front of witnesses and loads of people and shot the man in the head, you know. And it's a miracle shot because his blinders about. He couldn't see to drive or anything. I don't know. It was just a fluke, really, how he did it.
I think personally he'd insulted Ronnie and he had to be dealt with. I mean, somebody called Ronnie a fat puff. What happened? The guy got his jaw broke. You know, Donahue, who was one of their chief henchmen, he got shot for an insult. So they were, you know, it could not take an awful lot for Ronnie to want to kill somebody.
Well, that's the tragedy. He grew up with them, George Cornell, but he fell in love with a girl from South London, from Ellenham Castle. Very nice girl, top shoplifter. Fell in love with her, married her and moved over to her. And Reggie and Ronnie couldn't handle that. They thought he had deserted them by moving over there. That's where they were on very bright there. Well, they wasn't very brainy in many ways, and they did get lured by some funny people and get led into different situations that they couldn't handle. It was too much for them. Simple as that.
Frank Mitchell, he didn't deserve to die like that. Nor did Jack McVitie. People were terrified of him. I wasn't, I admit it, you know, because you never knew what you can do next. But I think if it wasn't for Ronnie, Reggie wouldn't have gone that way. It was Ronnie seemed to have command of everything, like, you know.
The Krays did not like the Richardsons, and the Richardsons didn't really have any one opinion or the other about the Krays. They were both doing their own things in different... The only place where the two firms would actually meet, and it wasn't that often, was in the West End. The Richardsons were the heavyweights in the West End itself. But we all went there.
They were criminal celebrities, you know, they were top of the tree. You had the Richardsons and the Krays, and I was friends with both of them, you know, and they were good to me, and I've got the greatest love and respect for them. They got a special place in my heart, and I'm not ashamed to say that, because they were compassionate. It had been a long war going on between both families. You've got to look at, if it goes off in there, what side are you going to take? Because you couldn't be true to two. You know, you had to take one side or the other. And I was really good friends with Reg. He was an absolute diamond to me, you know. And I was also absolutely good friends with Charlie, because it was Charlie Richardson who said to me, you're a bit better than this, get an education. You know, people talk about Charlie being a torturer and all that. Charlie's got a good heart, you know, he's a good man. And he was the one who actually pushed me into education and said to me, don't waste your life in here. And I love him to bits. But there was that that tension. And it got to a stage where people were going like, you know, the bond's got to be made. You can't walk about wondering if it's going to go big time. And so they had to get someone who both of them knew and trusted. And because I knew both of them, I got on well with both of them, you know. The word was put, like, you go and sit with them and sort it out. So basically, I didn't have to say no, I just sat there, making sure everything was all right. And they talked. And because he had a lot of years to go, you know, they were still doing a long sentence. And Charlie Richardson is a very, very intelligent man. I mean, he was a real intellectual in the true sense. He was well read and all that. And Reggie had got to the stage where, yeah, he was violent, but they got to the stage where they knew that no matter what, they was either going to have to live together or die. There would be death in there. And I think they got to the stage where they thought, you know, they'd had all their security units and been together. And I think the sting of what happened in the past, it died a little bit, you know, and I thought they thought to themselves, isn't our time? So when that was that time and the deal was done, then we could all sit and have a cup of tea together.
I was with him, Reggie, when he died. I sat up next to him in the bed when I released him. We left him and he said, don't go. He said, you're coming back. We said, we're going to the bar because the doctor arrived to give him an injection. And when we went back down again, he was completely unconscious. And I sat on the bed with him when he took his last breath, you know. It's weird that we went there that day. It seemed like he was waiting to see us before he passed away. It was weird. And I've seen it. The whole family's died in prison. Sad, really.
You never had gangsters like them, did you, in the East End? You never had gangsters like them.
Well, they left behind. Many people would have loved them to still be alive. That's what they've left behind. People miss them. They knew they were much safer in the streets of the East End when they were out than it is now. They were much safer. They were good, without a doubt.
Well, don't commit crimes or form gangs and protection rackets. And that's the message. Well, you know, I mean, the police made sure that Charlie wound up getting arrested years later, who never saw any drugs or wasn't involved in drugs, but got 12 years when he was 72 years of age. And he died in prison as well. So what sort of a legacy is it leave for young generations that are coming through to say, well, look what happened to them. You want to follow in their footsteps? The three brothers all died in prison. Sad story. And it doesn't advertise committing crime, does it? Well, I suppose that's what they intended.
You don't forget guys like Reggie and Ron, and it breaks me heart to know they're not with us now. And when they were two great guys, and the people in the East End, give them credit, they liked them very much. And they'd be the same as me, they miss them. People behind with their rent, they would go and pay it for them or whatever. Nothing was too much for them. They were two terrific guys. And even now it hurts, you know, they were 10 years or more younger than me, so I do. You would have liked them, honestly.
There's nothing romantic about villainy or robbery, you know. Someone always suffers in the end, don't they? You know.
When they did the film, the Krays, people glamorised the violence, but the real legacy they left was look after your own, and care about your community. That was all what no one saw the Krays. No one saw that, and I'll never forget one thing Ronnie said: never make excuses for what I've done. He didn't regret anything. He did it his way, and Reggie was the same. Reggie was the same. They lived their life the way they meant to live it.
We hope you enjoyed this video on the notorious Kray Twins. If you'd like to see more content like this, check out our other videos and make sure to subscribe to the channel to be the first to see our upcoming content. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.